Arthur Laatsch. I am a grandson of Louis Merrill, Genevieve Wingen, who inhabited this house when I was a youngster. So I have a lot of memories, a lot of stories. Their 50th reunion was literally right here on the porch where the bar was. And as a 14-year-old, I was allowed to do the car parking for all the guests. And all of the cars came up through the winding drive. I pulled them into the middle, and we had aisles, and that was just great fun for me driving cars, illegally, of course. And it was just there had to have been a couple hundred people, so it was impressive for me. For their 50th. Yep. So that's one of the more recent stories. I told my sister Mary, who was sort of helping with this tour, that I wouldn't really mention some of them, but as you can see, there's a lot of lawn. And he had a nice John Deere riding mower. It was a little 4-speed. And again, it was around my 13, 14 years of age, and I'd convinced him I could take care of that. So what I did is I took it out on the street, and it was like drag racing, first gear, second gear, third gear. Well, of course I broke it. And so we took the thing down to the John Deere dealer, which was on the other side of the movie theater. And the gentleman looked at it was my Appa, Lou Merrill, I called Appa. And his wife we called Nana. And the gentleman said, well, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never seen somebody be able to break this. So he looked at me, just shook his head, and we got it fixed. And he actually let me drive it again later. So he was a very in-control individual. My sister talked about him always having a cigar in his mouth. That was pretty much true. As soon as you walk into the house, I understand we're going to take a little tour, and the configuration inside is a bit different right now. They've taken the approach of I think the 1890s configuration versus the 1935 configuration. I see pictures up there. That's the house that we were used to. But whenever you'd come in the entryway, you'd go around the left, and there was this Chase lounge. And there was he in his slippers and a cigar and just a little bottle of blackberry brandy over on the side. But and not many people know this, but he had like 7/8 of his stomach removed due to ulcers as a younger man, and so it didn't take much to get Appa to have a little personality above and beyond, and he'd always have his cigar. And, I mean, it was just, I couldn't have imagined a better Appa, which is also why when it came time for a name for when our first grandchildren were coming, I was an Appa, or I said, geez, I'd sort of like to be an Appa. I said this to Becky, who's sitting next to you. And again, his wife we knew as Nana. And then my other grandparents down 2 blocks down was Margaret Baseman and August Laatsch. They were Grandpa and Grandma. So it was a nice, easy delineation for young guys. So, and then my mother became a Nana as well. Her husband, Art, he passed away very early at 52 from lung cancer, so my kids never got a chance to meet that Appa. But when I chose Appa, I said in my mind anyway, I said, Becky, I'd like to be an Appa. Well, we were in the bathroom, both in front of our own mirrors, and there was just crickets, nothing for a couple minutes. And then she finally said later, I can't be your mother. Nana. But that's all in the past. She's a Nana too. So they've given us that lineage, and my son has already said he'll be an Appa someday, hopefully. And so that's the pass down on Appa and Nana. And the reason I talk more about them, because just by design, my Nana was just, she'd take more time with the girls, and I just spent more time with my Appa, and he enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it. But he was, like I said before, he was not necessarily laissez-faire, but if there were a level of in citizenry or whatever, of more of an aristocrat, they would have been probably labeled into that, even though he really rejected that whole thing. He was an engineer by trade. He designed the dam down here on the Crow River, right as you enter town, and he'd do his walks daily with the dog. I mean, I think Mary said it was Ginger, but it was a lot. There was cocker after cocker after cocker, so I can hardly remember the names. He'd walk the dog downtown, and he'd hang with the guys, the construction workers, the guys that, you know, as they call it, the ordinary people. And that was his favorite. He didn't necessarily, you know, like to highbrow it. You know, reminiscing about stories, at least, that we got from them, and really, quite frankly, his daughter, his oldest daughter, Ruth Peterson, sister to my mother, Doris Merrill, really was the family genealogist as much as anything. She really took it all in and put it down on paper. But when they had the Sioux Uprising of, what is it, 1862, I think that's something like that, and even though a lot of it was still centered down in the Mankato and St. Peter area and stuff, I mean, it was everywhere around here. And I know when Hutchinson went under siege by the Sioux, they all hit to the stockades. They vacated this house, and everything was burned except this house. And the simple reason was that Little Crow, who had been around here for a long time before that, this is what he wanted, his house. He wanted it to be his house, and you know, you said, Becky, that he made it his headquarters for whatever short period of time that they were totally in control and, you know, laying siege to the stockade. But that's why this house remained, and that history is pretty unique, I think. And you know, you talk about Little Crow being, you know, Indian savage. It wasn't so at all. And as a matter of fact, you've even said yourself that there are stories where he was playing cards with others up here during that time. So, yeah, he was a cultured, you know, American Indian, but that was what happened back then. We're entering in from the outside porch, the overhang porch, and that was used, but not as much. They just sort of had it. I think they had drapes in front of it constantly here. Just right around to your right here, this is where they had the fireplace. It was wood burning. This is their living room. They had bookshelves underneath on the sides. This was the front room. And right where these signs are was Genevieve Wingen, my Nana. That was her perch. She had like the first lazy boy type piece of furniture so you could bring her feet up. And then this was just the entryway straight ahead where you have the Red Cross items there. That's where they had their upright piano. Right against that wall, yep. And then right here to your left, you're looking out this vestibule here. This was the main entrance to the house in the 1935 version that you're showing here behind you on these pictures. And the windows were on both sides, it's just peek outs. These were French doors right here that opened up inside the main front door. And then behind you is one of the more interesting pieces where the kids got in trouble a lot. Coming down this stairs from the top up there was a wonderful, smooth, contoured railing that came to a triple turn inside wood piece on top, which you can imagine, you know, and then with the post boards down below. We used to jump on there every time and get yelled at immediately by Nana, who was sitting in that chair. Yet we'd still make it down quick. Inside here was her little vestibule where she had her beautiful little secretary desk up against the wall. I see that that's cut out there, and I'm not sure if that was a closet or not. I'm pretty sure it might have been a closet that was always seemingly closed. We didn't do too much. The windows were here. And then this was a wall here. Even though there's stairs going down, the stairs, as I remember, came from the other way. It came from the kitchen. At least that's what I remember. So this was cordoned off. Again, this was the upright piano. We're not going upstairs, but the upstairs had a room over this entire thing with 2 dormers that we as kids thought were great, because the ceiling came right down to a 7-year-old, 8-year-old's level. They could touch it, and they had their own little nooks and crannies. So that was pretty neat. Coming in here, this doorway now, which is what they're showing from the circa they're designing it for, was out to the end of that beam, and this was all part of the dining room and just little sitting area up front, because as my Nana had her perch there, right here was the perch on his Chase Lounge, where my Appa, Lou Merrill, would constantly, the smoke was constantly going up. He always had a cigar, and he read his books. He's a paperback book fiend. When they were gone with thousands of paperback books, you know, just a fire hazard, I remember were just disposed of. But that went down towards the very end of this room, and about the last 10 feet was a and I think the roof came down on the outside a little bit, but it was the sunroom, where a roll top that we still have was in, and that's one more thing about my Appa that most people don't remember. He was truly ambidextrous. He could write and draw. He was a very good, I'm not going to say artist, but I mean, when it came to doing any type of drawing, what's the word for architects, you know, designing, he was do it in both hands. I couldn't figure it out. You know, I'm a lefty completely, so it was beyond me. That was the room back there with a single entrance. This was the dining room, where we're sitting right here, with the entrance to the kitchen that went back. And once you got into the kitchen, it was another room all the way down, this width, down 15 feet, each 20 feet. And then behind that, there was this little nook eating area that was pumped out another 5 feet, which had a table and sort of sit around benches on it. So it was really quite unique. And then I had a back entryway. So the house was more extensive when we were growing up, and that was even downsized from the house that had been there in the 20s and in the 1900. You know, they used to have, and then it used to connect out the horse barn over to the side. So that's my recollection, and the house for kids was phenomenal. It was just a great place to come and get lost in and find something to mischief in.